Well, basically, James, can you believe what just happened at number 10 Downing Street?
Yes, I can believe it. Yeah. I mean, for me, this is the final straw. What we've all done, whether we agree with it or not, most people have conformed in this country to try and get the country through this mess. We've stayed at home way back in April last year and at Christmas last year. We've taken the jabs, we've worn masks, we've watched our businesses close, our schools close. And do you remember back in February or March this year, it was 15 million jabs for freedom. And here we are at Christmas on the back of knowing now that there's various soirees and Christmas parties in the government last year, despite the fact they were telling us to all stay at home. And here we are this year in a Mobius loop going through all this again. Now, there is an argument for the previous lockdowns or restrictions because there wasn't just cases that were surging, hospitalizations were going through the roof back in January this year.
People were dying. People were dying, for God's sake.
Yeah, huge numbers, over 1,000 people a day. This time, through November, hospitalizations have dropped. They dropped by over 16%. The new variant isn't showing any hospitalizations, thankfully, at the moment. And at the moment, we have 5% COVID patients filling the beds of the NHS. This is not about protecting the NHS anymore. The numbers and the data don't back that up. So this is the first lockdown, and I've not been a fan of any of the lockdowns, but this is the first one where there is no data to back this up. I've lost my patience.
Yeah. I mean, the point is, James, as I keep saying, he just stood up and basically wrecked Christmas for millions of people, brought in draconian new measures, particularly the vaccine passport for the first time in England. And they don't know what Omicron is. They don't know how serious it is, or more to the point, how mild it is. They do know that after 500 or so cases, no one has been hospitalised and no one has died. So the indications are it could be very mild. And yet, from a position of absolutely no knowledge, Boris feels entitled to impose all these rules, regulations and restrictions that have cast a massive cloud over everyone's Christmas. What on earth is he playing at?
Completely agree. I mean, if you look at the chair of the South African Medical Association, she wrote an article over the weekend saying she cannot understand what's going on in Britain. South Africa were smeared by that they caused this variant. No, they didn't. They basically discovered it first. They've got very good virologists down there. They're on top of a lot of this sort of thing. But she wrote an article saying, why are you behaving like this? It's scaremongering, it's OTT. Based on our experience of a few weeks longer, all we're seeing is cases. We're not seeing the serious cases go with this. And so I don't get this at all now. I think there's aspects at play here that in terms of whether it's, dead cat syndrome or whether it's to do with burying bad news, or whether it's it just might just be pure panic or incompetence. But I think on this one, the dial has moved in terms of public perception, because I think we have largely gone along with this because we trusted the so-called science.
Yeah.
But what we've got to start doing is understanding and trusting the data.
Yeah.
And the data is not telling us at all that we should be having any form of restrictions right now.
Yeah.
5% NHS beds used by COVID patients. We're not nearly in the same position we were last winter. Not at all.
Absolutely. I've been screaming since Omicron first reared its ugly head. What was it, like last Friday week? How many people have died? How many people in hospital? And what the hell are the symptoms? Desmond Swain managed to elicit kicking and screaming out of the Health Secretary Sajid Javid a couple of days ago the fact that no one had been hospitalised and therefore no one had died. And Desmond then asked the Health Secretary, has anyone actually been ill because of Omicron? And he couldn't quite answer that. There is no science to back up what they're doing. They're just flailing in the dark for God knows why. Just a quick breaking news story, James. Big surprise. The Metropolitan Police says it is not going to investigate claims of a Downing Street Christmas party during lockdown last year. A statement from the force says there is, quotes, an absence of evidence that any gathering actually took place. Well, hey, plods, why don't you go and get some evidence? Because it's pretty clear a party did take place. Unbelievable.
It's ridiculous. I mean, this is the other aspect of this where people have lost their patience with all of this. It's a case of do as I say, but not as I do with the government. There's so many examples. It's not just the UK government. It's happening all over the world. Look at the way they've been strutting around on G7 or G20 or COP Christmas parties last year. But the Christmas parties one last year particularly bad because they were telling us to all basically stay in our boxes. Meanwhile, they're swanking around, clinking glasses with glorious functions and champagne and wine and secret Santas and laughing with mock press conferences and so on. People look at that and think, I've done my bit for 18 months. Mm-hmm. I want to keep my business open. I want my kids to go to school, ideally without masks. I want to basically hug my friends and family over the festive period. I want to travel to see people. But meanwhile, the government are telling me that I can't do that, despite the fact that the previous year, they didn't seem to be bothered by the rules at all. I think we're at a moment in this, and it's a critical moment. We either carry on with this and continue to be subservient and go along with all these rules, despite the fact the government aren't doing it, or we start saying enough is enough. And I think